Welcome, friends, to CNS Viewpoint. Today, we are going to talk about, can we get a good night's sleep when our neighbor's house is on fire? COVID-19 pandemic is still not over, friends. So one may assume that all governments will be doing their utmost best to ensure everyone stay healthy and safe during the global public health emergency that continues to take lives. Thousands of people are dying every 7 days, and millions are getting infected with coronavirus every 7 days. If you look at the weekly epidemiological update of the World Health Organization. But sadly, ground realities show that this is far from the truth that governments are doing their utmost to control the pandemic. Many governments are forcing people to be in very vulnerable situations which put people at grave risk of getting seriously harmed, face violence, exploitation, and abuse, and even die. And of course, maybe get infected with coronavirus if it matters. For example, what is the relevance of the advisory of wearing mask, maintain social distancing, practice sanitation, get vaccinated for the residents of Ukraine who are facing armed attack from Ukraine, from Russia? And there are similar violent situations occurring in other parts of the world, including maybe in ours, if we look deeper within. And if we have the courage to honestly see the violence which is happening, maybe in our own homes, in our own backyards. Slogans like "every life matters" sound so cliche and hollow when we see the ground reality. More importantly, how can we forget that even before the pandemic had begun, a very large proportion of the human population has been living in appalling, squalid conditions in slums and otherwise, sans proper sanitation, without potable water, without access to basic health care, social security. The vast majority of inequalities and social injustices within rich nations and between rich and poor nations is well known and documented. For example, I have mostly lived in player cities where there was, not mostly, always lived in cities where there was almost uninterrupted electric supply. I'm saying almost because some electric supply disruptions were there, but then we had battery backup. We still have battery backup. So I don't get to feel when the electricity power is shutdown happens because then the battery backup takes over. Very rarely I am without electricity. But is it true for most of the people in even in my city and in my state? Do they also get 24 hours or almost 24 hours electric supply? Forget about water, food, shelter. Just talking about privileges, rights, entitlements, which are just so granted. Important nevertheless, the World Health Organization, which is UN health agency, had raised an alarm last week about depleting oxygen stocks in Ukraine and the looming threat of oxygen crisis. Remember, friends, this oxygen shortage is not due to the coronavirus, but because of Russian attack on Ukraine. So much preventable and avoidable in today's times. Inspiring global health influencer Dr. Paul Farmer, who died in Rwanda last month, our regards to him and deepest respect to him and condolences to his family and loved ones. Dr. Paul Farmer had rightly said, and I will quote him, structural violence is one way of describing social arrangements that put individuals and populations in harm's way. The arrangements are structural because they are embedded in the political and economic organization of a social world. The arrangements are structural because they are embedded in the political and economic organization of our social world. That is how it is organized. And these are violent because they cause injury to people. So I'll end the quote here. Dr. Paul Farmer is so bang on the spot. Moreover, while structural violence is negatively impacting the social security of 99% of the population of our planet, it seems to work in the interest of the top 1% richest of the rich who are becoming wealthier by the day And there seems to be no sincere and serious effort on the part of global entities or local governed entities which are accountable to we the people to stop this shameful amassing of riches, to do redistributive justice of resources, which is essential cog in the wheel for sustainable development. All that they can offer are catchy slogans and lip sympathy in the form of advisories that the general public does not have the wherewithal to follow. Until recently, about until over three quarters of the health facilities in Afghanistan reported stockouts of essential medicines, and there was a looming threat to sustain the health workers in their posts. In the Tigray region of the Ethiopia, even the UN agencies like the WHO have not been permitted to deliver medical supplies since mid-July 2021. There were shortages of like very basic IV fluid stuff and like diabetes, insulin, etc. And even very essential, very basic things which are needed to for routine health services. This is despite repeated requests from the WHO to provide medical supplies in Tigray to help meet at least some of the humanitarian health needs of people living there. Even in the toughest periods of conflict in Syria, South Sudan, Yemen, and others, WHO and partners like UN and humanitarian agencies have had access to save lives. But Tigray in Ethiopia is out of reach, where the de facto blockade is preventing access to basic humanitarian supplies, which is killing people. Did not the world recognize early on, but fail to walk the talk, that the only way out of the pandemic is to fight it together, and that the rich nations cannot escape the virus by giving vaccines and boosters to their own populations alone? But currently, with over almost around 11 billion vaccine doses administered in a world of 7 billion people, over 3 billion have not even got a single dose yet. Imagine 11 billion vaccine doses administered. Global population is 7 billion, and almost half of that, 3 billion, are left, did not even get one dose. On the other hand, we have countries like China, which is trying to follow zero COVID 19 policy. But is it possible to get to zero unless the rest of the world does? Another example of stark, inequality is inequity is of two Korean countries. Of course, there are political and other issues between nations, but this in global health emergency, when it is important that if we have to end Corona, then it is only possible if we work together. Are we really working together? On one hand, we have North Korea, which, when I read last, had not even administered a single dose of the vaccine. And on another hand, we have the neighboring South Korea, which has very high vaccination rates, one of the best in the world, with very low numbers of COVID 19 new infections, which is really great and commendable to the health systems in South Korea. And around 6,000 deaths when I read last over the last 2 years. Every life matters, but keeping the death numbers low is really important and testimony of good COVID response in South Korea. But the world has to realize, and South Korea and all governments have to realize, that they need to walk the talk on if we have to end the pandemic. It is only possible if if we do this together. It is not possible to find a way out of the pandemic just for rich nations by vaccinating their own population only and giving them booster after booster. That is not possible. That is not a choice. And the whole dichotomy, the whole the irony that the development agencies, we cannot talk in silos. When WHO says there's oxygen shortage in Ukraine, it's a UN agency, it also needs to ensure that the UN is working more effectively in ensuring global peace, and situations like the Russia and Ukraine conflict, like Syria, like Yemen, uh, like Tigray, and like so many others do not happen. So, if we read the United Nations Charter, a lot of these values and principles are enshrined there. So I will really suggest, if for those who haven't got a chance to yet read the UN Charter, it is online. Please read the UN Charter. It is quite worth a read. It is an important document for reference because it is your and my governments which have ratified it, which have agreed upon this for global peace, for in times of utmost crisis after World War II. So let us hope that more sanity prevails. Let us hope more justice prevails. Let us hope we all are in this together and walk the talk on sustainable development where no one is left behind, truly. With these words, I will end today's CNS Viewpoint, and tomorrow again, we will be back at 5 p.m. India time with our thoughts and views and perspectives on something that made us think. Thank you.